So this is going to be my very first book review. I have not done this in a while. I tried to do a review for a video game before and it didn't really work out, so we'll try that again. For a book this time. And the way that my reviews work is kind of complicated, but at the same time is really not if you just don't overthink it. I will start with an intro, which is pretty much just going to describe the story, and it's going to give you some pretty basic but albeit important information such as the author, if it's in a series, page numbers, yada yada yada. I will also have two categories where I will rate the book, right now it's book. It's going to have a writing quality and entertainment. Entertainment is just going to be based off a scale that I wrote down. It's going to be based off just what I thought. And writing quality is going to have subcategories. And the writing quality score will, before I even rate it, the score will start at 10. And as I go through the subcategories, if I have a negative or I don't like if I have a negative attitude towards a subcategory or I don't like that certain aspect of the book, video game, movie, whatever, that'll be 1 minus point, 1 negative, which will subtract from the 10. It'll subtract 0.5 from the 10. So let's say I review a book and of all the subcategories, I only disliked 3 of them. So that would make the score an 8.5 out of 10. It's pretty simple if you just don't overthink it. And then the outro will pretty much be my final thoughts and my explanations behind the things that I did not like. So with that, let's get started. I know that probably took a little bit more time than I wanted, but whatever. So the first book that I'm going to be reviewing is A Separate Peace. I'm not sure if you can see it, probably can't, but it is by John Knowles. It is 204 pages, it is 13 chapters, and it is in the genre coming of age / interpersonal relationships. And the story of this book is pretty much about Finney and Jean. There are other characters that are involved, but they're not really that important in the long run. You know, there's some that kind of prove to sort of be important, like the character's name is Elwyn. They call him Lepellier. I think I mispronounced it, but he's introduced in the beginning, and he's not really, they don't really talk about him until later, and he's just kind of like, I don't know, it's weird. But it's pretty much about Finney and Jean growing up in a boarding school that's preparing young boys for the war, the World War I, and it is in New Hampshire, and it is in the summer of their junior year and then going into senior year. All seniors get enlisted into the Army, and the summer session that they have as juniors is new, and it's just to keep up with the war. And Jean is actually, the way that John Knowles portrays Jean is that Jean is kind of pretty well-rounded. He's good at sports and really good at school. And Finney is kind of sort of the opposite. He's amazing at sports. He's like the top sports guy, top athlete for their school. And then he's okay at school. He's just not as good as Jean. In fact, he's like nothing compared to Jean. Jean is the narrator talking during this entire story, by the way, and he's actually talking in the past. It's a little confusing in the beginning because he's talking about a time when he went back to go visit the school after he had already graduated. So it's pretty much just about their friendship, stories, the time of them being in high school, It's just their adventures in high school. Finney and Jean mostly. So let's get started with the actual review. Starting with quality, writing quality, plot. I'm going to have to say this is a negative on me. I did not like how John Knowles portrayed the plot. I don't know. I'll get to it on the outro. Literary devices. That's a plus. He used a fairly good amount of literary devices in a good way. Characters. Again, another minus. I didn't like a lot of the characters, in all honesty. They were not memorable or enjoyable. A lot of them are just really weird. If it was well written, and it was very well written, that makes grammatical sense. It was well written. So that's a plus. Story was good. Yeah, the story was really good. I really like coming-of-age books. If coming-of-age books aren't your thing, you probably will not like the story because it's kind of boring for people who do not like coming-of-age stories, which are usually like schooling adventures. It's just pretty much them going through school. You know, creativeness. Never heard of this kind of story before. I've heard about coming-of-age books plenty of times, and they are usually about kids going through school, kids developing different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people, having different thoughts about different people. But it's never been about during the war. So that was different. That was the creative part. Proofreading, which pretty much means spelling, punctuation. This is bad. If you do not like commas, you will hate this book. Every sentence, he used like 10 commas. It's ridiculous. Length. This is fairly lengthy. Not lengthy like too lengthy, but it was a good type of length. If that makes sense. It actually suited the story. It wasn't too long, it wasn't too short. It was only 204 pages, like that's really short. But I mean, it suited the story well. Like I didn't see how much further the story could have gone unless John Knowles took it even backwards and he started the story in their junior year, you know. Humor. There were times where I would be reading this and I would just kind of laugh out loud. So there is humor. I mean, most coming-of-age books don't have this. And this is kind of a classic, I think, because I had to read it for summer school, or summer reading. That's why I'm reviewing it, because that's the only book that I focused on thus far. So the quality score, since I didn't like the plot, or the characters, or the proofreading, that would make the score an 8.5 out of 10 for quality. It's not bad, by the way, that's actually really good. An entertainment score. I gave this one a 9.5 out of 10 because I honestly liked it a lot, but I couldn't, like, it wasn't like one of those books where I could just read for like 5 hours on end and like be like, oh, I've been reading for 5 hours? I didn't even know. Like, it wasn't like that, so it didn't deserve a 10, but it definitely deserved a 9.5. Now let's go into the outro. I did the imagination from SpongeBob for some reason. The outro. This book was honestly like extremely enjoyable. I did not expect it to be this enjoyable. I liked it a lot. I liked how it was written, and I think it's probably my favorite book up to this point, like, in all honesty. And now let me get on to the negatives, let me explain why I didn't like the negatives. I didn't like the plot because there were a lot of characters that were introduced that really didn't need to be introduced, that were not useful. There was a character that was introduced for a chapter, and you legit did not hear about him ever again. Like, you heard his name. Like, Gene was like, this person. He wrote the name, but he did not go in depth. We didn't learn anything about that character. I think that was a bad point in the plot. That's why I didn't really like it. Now onto the characters. I honestly did not think the characters were that memorable. They were just weird. Like, they couldn't make up their mind half the time. They would sometimes think a certain way, and I'd be like, oh, I like them. And then other times they would like contradict themselves. That was kind of how John Knowles probably wanted it to be, but I honestly didn't like it. Now the proofreading. The punctuation was really bad. Every 5 seconds there was either a comma, semicolon, colon, and it's like, you can just end the sentence a little sooner and it'll be better. I mean, I just wish that John would have ended it kind of before he had to use the semicolon. If you have to use a semicolon more than once, like, a semicolon shouldn't even be in regular paragraphs or books. Like, it should only come if it's like a list, or if you were like, I can't end this sentence. But it was in like every sentence. Every other sentence there would be a semicolon, or a colon, or a comma. It was so annoying. I didn't really mind it, but I know that a lot of people will mind it. Regardless of these minor nitpicks, I honestly think this book is well worth it. And it's good, and it's nice. There's a lot of vocab that are odd. It was written in 1959, so it's not like it's Shakespearean, but it's not vocab that I've ever heard of before. So if you are looking for a coming-of-age book or just a good, quick summer read, I would definitely suggest A Separate Peace. You probably can't see that, but that's it. So, with that said, thank you for watching. I hope I made you laugh or smile today. Do something nice for someone today. You're all great and amazing in your own way, and I hope to see you next time. Subscribe for more. I'll make a new review soon because I have to read a bunch of books for summer reading. Bye!